Well, hello. Time for another demo, another one of my guitars. This isn't a new acquisition. This is actually one of the first guitars that I bought. It's actually the second. I got this maybe a couple of weeks after I got my purple Telecaster. I, of course, am a huge Beatles fan. And this obviously looks like Equinox. This obviously looks like what they call a Beatle bass or a violin bass, and it's based on a Hofner 500-1, I believe they used to call them, the original number. And, well, it's a 4-string, it's left-handed, it's custom-made, it's got a nice flame top in blue, and in the back it's the same thing. I really like this guitar. There has been one modification done to this guitar, and it's the pickups. The original pickups that came with it sounded great when I first got the bass, but for some reason, I don't know, maybe it's the wax that was in the pickups themselves, either melted away or something, but usually pickups like this, they're usually what they call potted, which means that they're surrounded by a certain material to insulate them so they don't become microphonic, like little microphones. So can stop you from, you know, especially if you're using amplifiers and all that, from squealing and feedback and whatnot. So without further ado, here's the bass. Oh, and yeah, these are new pickups. They're Arctic pickups. They're made specifically for these types of basses, or for Rickenbackers, or even Epiphones that uses mini humbuckers like this. And they sound pretty good. Actually, they end up being actually stronger than the original pickups. But I think actually with the little screws on there, kind of makes it look spiffy. Anyway. Play some bass. I should perhaps note that I'm recording the bass directly into the computer, of course, but unlike the other guitars and whatnot, the demos that I've done, especially with Rosa, this is just direct. The only effect that I'm using on this bass guitar is a limiter, just to bring the volume up a little bit and keep it from overloading or distorting. It has quite a bit of signal by itself. Right now, everything is open full blast. Both pickups are on, and I'm going to take this here. I'm going to take out the bridge pickup just so you can hear the neck pickup, and it sounds kind of punchy, actually. Okay, now I'm going to turn down the neck pickup and just the bridge pickup, and actually, even by itself, the bridge pickup sounds pretty good. I mean, you don't have all the bottom end, but you still have the punch in it, though. Anyway. I'm not much of a bass player yet, although I seem to be a little better than on the guitar. And this is in a standard tuning, EAGB. No, actually, EADGB. I know, EADG. There we go. I keep forgetting. I keep going one string too far. So I'm going to turn both pickups up again. And the thing about these particular basses, it's a semi-acoustic bass. It has a bit of a sustain block under here. Actually smells kind of nice. It still smells like sawdust in here. The thing about these basses too, they're kind of neck heavy. Like if I let it go, whoops, I'm getting all that rumble there. Whoops. See, so what I do is that I usually have my hand in the nook right here and play this way, since I usually play on top of this pickup here. But if you're somebody who likes to anyway, I prefer playing up here because it's nice and thick and deep. I've got D'Addario chromes on here. I believe they are 45 to 100s, which are, medium gauge. They're not the most ideal. Usually lighter gauge is better. I have some Rotosound Monel 77s that are 45 to 95, which are, for some reason, a little better suited. They're more broken in, but I had bought these strings originally, and they're not quite broken in yet, but actually they don't sound too bad. But they still have quite a few overtones, so I'm going to do the old trick here and add some foam right at the bridge. And this foam here is relatively soft, so it shouldn't bring it out too much in terms of making it sharp for the intonation. It's just to dampen some of the nasty harmonics. Usually it's soft and relatively light foam, so okay. Now, Paul McCartney, of course, he's a very influential bassist, and along with just an all-around musician. And when he used to play a violin bass, he wouldn't finger like I would. He would actually use a pick and do some maybe palm muting, but let's see, we can do some palm muting as well. Well, there you go. There was the demo of my Spock bass, or the VB-01 from Equinox Musical Instruments. Verdict about the bass guitar itself. I like it a lot. I fell in love with it when I got it, and as I mentioned in the video, the original pickups in them, they sounded great, but I think because I had it in storage for about almost a year and a half before I was able to come and get them. I don't know what happened to them. I guess the wax that probably was in it, or whatever they used to pot them, as I explained in the video. That's what insulates them acoustically from the rest of the bass, so that they don't just become little microphones and they pick up everything. And also, the thing with it makes them weaker without them being potted, and also they pick up all sorts of interference. And I've also noticed something about these pickups I had in there. They weren't humbuckers from what I can tell. I think they were actually single coils, but because the bass guitar itself was grounded it was grounded to the bridge. In any case, there are true humbuckers in there right now, and I'll show you a closer look here. And they sound really good. I think actually with those screws on there, the bass looks a lot spiffier. I think it sounds a lot better, and I just love the headstock. I mean, all of this is like fully customized, you know. It's a 30-inch scale, so it's a short scale, although just because the neck is sticking out like that so much, it just makes it look long. And I mean, next to my my Squier Fender jazz bass, you know, they look like they're the same scale, but they're not. Because, you know, the scale goes from the bridge to the nut. And anyway, also the bass is a little further back. But getting back to what I think about the problem with basses like this, acoustic basses like this, they have a great sound, but they're kind of a one or two trick pony when it comes to basses, compared to a solid body like my Jazz in the back there, or a P bass, or a Rickenbacker, or any other type of solid bass, Ibanez, you name it. To be able to play funk on it, like pop and slap or what have you, it's kind of difficult, simply because it has a floating bridge on it, in case you've noticed. And with the floating bridge like that, you know, it stays in place because of the tension of the strings. And if you pop and slap, you know, you sort of move the bridge a little bit, and you know, your tuning can be off, your action can be off, and if you pull and slap hard enough, the bridge can fall off completely, especially while you're performing, you know, because you're like this. So it's not recommended. Also, putting round wound strings on this particular bass, which is what it originally came with, I just felt it sounded completely wrong. Really, you can only maybe put half rounds on it, or pressure rounds if you go the GHS route. The strings I have on there, I think I mentioned they are Diodario. Yeah, they have the purple silks. Yeah, those are Diodarios. Diodario chromes. The strings on there, they're a little heavy for it, but they do sound good, and they're not quite as broken in as the roto sounds I had on there. And I probably should have put the roto sounds back on when I changed the pickups in this, but what's done is done. I'll break these ones in. And anyway, I got 2 sets for this bass anyway. Would I recommend buying this bass? Depends what kind of music you're into. I mean, if you're into old school like me and you just want to finger and maybe pick, this bass is great for you. It's great also if you're a guitarist and, you know, a 34-inch scale that's on, you know, these babies here, the jazz basses or the P basses or the Rickenbackers or, you know, those Ibanez ones. If that's too much for you, then maybe getting one of these is a good choice. Sound-wise, they're really good. I've improved it somewhat with the new pickups, but the original pickups that came with this, they sound almost just as good. They're just a little more quiet. So I would recommend it, you know, and especially if you're in a cover band. I mean, this thing is light. This thing is hollow. It's, incidentally, I should maybe explain, this is like full maple. It's a maple neck, and this is basically a 3-ply maple top and maple sides, 5-ply maple sides and back. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful, and I mean, I paid about $380 Canadian shipped for this thing, and it's just absolutely beautiful. This is also prototype bass. From what I hear, they've actually improved it since then. Of course, they didn't invent this bass, but for the factory that Equinox deals with, this is probably the first bass, or one of the first basses they produced. But yeah, you know, tuners are really good. They're the Goto style closed tuners for basses. You find these on Ibanez's and a lot of different basses, especially short scale basses. And it's good for this because the pegs are nice and big, so they handle the silk end of the flat wounds really well. So yeah, I would recommend this bass. As for me personally, I'm finding myself gravitating more towards the jazz bass, just because it has a little bit more top end to it, and with the strings that I have on it, you know, I get the best of both worlds. But as you've heard in the video, you know, the short scale bass like this, it's got a lot of bottom end to it, so it's very useful. So I would recommend it. And thanks again for watching, and I hope this video didn't go on too long. Hope helps you out. A big shout out to CheapGearGuy, who actually, you know, set me up with this guitar. I mean, I ordered it through Equinox Musical Instruments, his instruments company. Go out and check him out. And hi, CheapGearGuy. Sorry it took so long for me to make this video. Anyway, please leave your comments or questions below.